The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting an unforgiving glow across the sterile conference room. Across the table, Victoria's hands trembled slightly as she clutched her portfolio tighter, knuckles white against the leather-bound edges. She had spent weeks preparing for this moment, months, if she was honest with herself. Her heart thudded in her chest like a war drum, each beat echoing through her ears. "I'm sorry, but we can't justify promoting you at this time," said Marcus, the HR manager, his voice clipped and impersonal. He didn't even glance up from the papers sprawled before him, his pen scratching notes that felt more dismissive than constructive. "Your current contributions are solid, yes, but your side project, it doesn't align with our long-term goals. Frankly, it's unprofitable." Unprofitable. The word hung in the air like a lead weight, heavy and suffocating. Victoria blinked once, twice, trying to process what he'd just said. Unprofitable? How could something so personal, so painstakingly crafted, be reduced to such a cold, clinical term? She wanted to argue, to explain how much blood, sweat, and tears had gone into building that project. How late nights blurred into early mornings as she pored over research papers, coding sessions, and endless iterations of prototypes. But instead, she sat there silently, her jaw clenched tight enough to make her teeth ache. She knew arguing wouldn't change anything. Not now. Marcus continued speaking, his tone matter-of-fact, as though delivering bad news was just another item on his checklist. "We need someone who can focus entirely on their role here without distractions. And while your work ethic is commendable, your priorities seem divided. This isn't about age or tenure, it's about where we see potential growth within the company." Potential growth. Those two words stung worse than anything else he'd said. After 20 years of loyal service, countless promotions denied despite exemplary performance reviews, Victoria thought she understood rejection. But this felt different. It wasn't just professional, it cut deeper, striking at the core of who she was. Her side project wasn't some frivolous hobby. It was her passion. Her dream. A culmination of everything she'd learned throughout her career, distilled into something innovative, groundbreaking even. Something she believed could genuinely make a difference. To hear it dismissed so casually left her feeling hollow, like all those sleepless nights meant nothing. As Marcus wrapped up the meeting, offering platitudes about future opportunities and open doors, Victoria nodded mechanically, forcing a polite smile onto her face. Inside, though, she was seething. Anger bubbled beneath the surface, mingling with frustration and disbelief. For years, she'd played by the rules, followed every guideline, exceeded expectations whenever possible. Yet here she was, being told she wasn't good enough because of something she loved doing. Walking out of the conference room, Victoria felt eyes follow her down the hallway. Whispers carried faintly behind closed office doors, snippets of conversation she couldn't quite catch but didn't need to. Everyone knew by now, the grapevine always spread gossip faster than official memos ever could. By lunchtime, half the floor would know she'd been passed over again. Again. Back at her desk, surrounded by the familiar hum of keyboards clicking and phones ringing, Victoria stared blankly at her computer screen. Emails piled up unread, notifications blinked incessantly, yet none of it registered. Instead, memories flooded back, unbidden and unwelcome. Memories of when she first started working here, fresh-faced and eager, full of ideas and ambition. Back then, people listened. Back then they cared. Over the years, however, things changed. Slowly at first, almost imperceptibly. Projects she spearheaded were credited to others. Ideas she pitched during brainstorming sessions resurfaced months later under different names. Promotions came and went, always landing in someone else's lap. At first, she chalked it up to bad timing or fierce competition. But eventually reality set in. No matter how hard she worked, how brilliant her contributions might be, she was invisible. Except when it came to criticism. Then suddenly, everyone noticed. Sighing heavily, Victoria leaned back in her chair, rubbing her temples. Maybe Marcus was right. Maybe she did let her side project distract her too much. But how could she not? Every spare moment outside work hours, and sometimes during them, was devoted to perfecting it. Late nights hunched over her laptop, weekends spent debugging code, holidays interrupted by sudden bursts of inspiration. It consumed her body and soul, driving her forward even when exhaustion threatened to pull her under. And why shouldn't it? Everything she poured into that project stemmed directly from her experiences here. Years of navigating corporate politics taught her exactly what businesses needed most: efficiency, transparency, innovation. So why shouldn't she leverage that knowledge to create something better? Something revolutionary? Of course, explaining any of this to Marcus would have been pointless. People like him only saw numbers, charts, graphs. They didn't understand passion or creativity or vision. All they cared about was profit margins and quarterly reports. Anything outside those parameters was deemed unnecessary, expendable. But Victoria refused to believe that. Refused to accept that her dreams were worthless simply because they hadn't turned a profit yet. Deep down, she knew she was on to something special. Something transformative. If only someone would give her a chance to prove it. Just thinking about it reignited the fire inside her belly, pushing aside doubts and insecurities. Screw Marcus. Screw the whole damn company. They didn't deserve her loyalty anymore. Not after today. Resolved, Victoria opened her email client, drafting a quick message to request vacation days. She needed time away from this toxic environment, space to breathe and refocus. Time to finish what she started without constant interruptions or judgmental glares looming over her shoulder. Once sent, she packed up her belongings, ignoring curious stares from coworkers as she slipped out of the office earlier than usual. Normally, leaving mid-afternoon raised eyebrows, prompted questions about meetings or appointments. Today, however, Victoria didn't care. Let them talk. Let them speculate. She had bigger fish to fry. Driving home, adrenaline coursed through her veins, fueling determination rather than despair. As she pulled into her driveway, sunlight streaming through tree branches dappling shadows across her lawn, Victoria allowed herself a small smile. This setback wasn't the end, it was merely a detour. An unexpected twist in the road leading somewhere greater. Inside, she headed straight for her home office, shutting the door firmly behind her. The room smelled faintly of coffee and printer ink, comforting scents associated with countless hours spent chasing perfection. Flicking on the overhead light, Victoria surveyed her workspace. Cluttered desk covered in post-it notes, whiteboard scribbled with equations and diagrams, shelves lined with books and gadgets. This was her sanctuary, her battlefield. Here, amidst chaos and creativity, she found solace. Plopping down in her chair, Victoria booted up her computer, fingers flying across the keyboard as she dove headfirst into her project. Hours melted away unnoticed, replaced by lines of code, design tweaks, and troubleshooting sessions. Hunger pangs came and went, ignored in favor of progress. Sleep became irrelevant, pushed aside until tasks were completed. For days, Victoria lived like this, emerging briefly to shower or grab snacks before retreating back into her cocoon of creation. Friends called, concerned about her well-being, urging her to take breaks, get fresh air. She promised she would, eventually, but never followed through. There simply wasn't time. Not when inspiration struck like lightning, illuminating paths previously obscured by doubt and fear. Finally, after what felt like eons, Victoria reached a breakthrough. One final adjustment clicked everything into place, transforming disjointed pieces into a cohesive whole. Sitting back, she stared at her screen in awe, barely daring to believe what she'd accomplished. It worked. Against all odds, despite every obstacle thrown her way, she'd done it. Excitement surged through her, bubbling over until laughter spilled from her lips. Tears pricked at the corners of her eyes, blurring the triumphant image displayed before her. She'd created something truly remarkable, something capable of changing lives. Now all she needed was validation, from peers, investors, anyone willing to listen. Research led her to various tech forums, startup incubators, venture capitalists looking for the next big thing. Rejection letters piled up initially, discouraging but expected. Each one fueled her resolve further, pushing her to refine pitches, improve presentations, hone arguments. Persistence paid off eventually, earning her a coveted spot in a prestigious pitch competition hosted by industry giants. Standing backstage, waiting for her turn to present, nerves threatened to overwhelm Victoria. What if they hated it? What if they laughed her off stage? Taking deep breaths, she reminded herself why she was here. Why she endured endless ridicule, sacrificed weekends, risked everything. For moments like these. Moments where dreams collided with reality, birthing possibilities previously unimaginable. When her name was called, Victoria stepped onto the stage, heart pounding wildly. Spotlights blinded her momentarily, silhouetting faces scattered throughout the audience. Microphone in hand, she began speaking, voice steady despite inner turmoil. Slide after slide flashed behind her, illustrating concepts, demonstrating functionality, showcasing potential impact. Passion infused every word, painting vivid pictures of futures transformed by her invention. By the time she finished, applause erupted around her, deafening cheers reverberating through the auditorium. Relief washed over Victoria, followed swiftly by exhilaration. She'd done it. Convinced skeptics, silenced critics, proven doubters wrong. Amongst the crowd stood representatives from major corporations, influential figures whose approval carried significant weight, including Google. Post-presentation mingling turned chaotic quickly, swarms of attendees vying for attention, exchanging business cards, discussing collaborations. Victoria navigated through throngs of people, politely declining offers, searching for specific individuals mentioned earlier during introductions. Finally spotting them near the refreshment table, she approached cautiously, extending a handshake. "Ms. Chen?" asked one gentleman, smiling warmly. "I must say, your presentation impressed us greatly. We'd love to discuss licensing options further." "Licensing options?" Victoria blinked, momentarily stunned. Licensing implied interest, certainly, but acquisition represented ultimate success. Swallowing disappointment, she nodded graciously, engaging in pleasant conversation while secretly hoping for more substantial offers. Hours passed before another group approached, introductions revealing them as senior executives from Google. Instantly, Victoria recognized their significance, posture stiffening slightly as anticipation built. Small talk ensued briefly before one executive cut straight to the chase. "Your technology fascinates us," he admitted bluntly. "We're interested in acquiring it outright. Name your price." "Name my price?" Victoria fought to maintain composure, mind racing furiously. Numbers flashed through her thoughts, calculations based on development costs, market value estimates, competitor analyses. Yet none seemed sufficient, inadequate compared to the magnitude of opportunity presented. "What about equity?" she countered hesitantly, testing waters carefully. "Partnership arrangements?" The executives exchanged glances, nodding subtly amongst themselves. Clearly, negotiations intrigued them, sparking curiosity rather than annoyance. Encouraged, Victoria pressed onward, outlining terms, conditions, expectations. Back and forth discussions stretched late into the evening, tension mounting alongside excitement. Eventually, agreement solidified, contracts drafted outlining mutually beneficial arrangements. Financial figures staggered Victoria momentarily, millions exchanging hands virtually overnight. Dreams materialized tangibly, bank accounts swelling beyond wildest imaginings. Success tasted sweet indeed, vindication served piping hot. News spread rapidly following announcements, media outlets clamoring for interviews, colleagues reaching out belatedly offering congratulations. Former employers watched developments unfold silently, perhaps regretfully, realizing mistakes made far too late. Victoria basked in newfound fame briefly, relishing recognition earned fairly through grit and perseverance. Yet amidst celebrations, reflection settled heavily upon her shoulders. Triumph brought satisfaction, yes, but also clarity regarding past injustices suffered silently for years. Lessons learned transcended monetary gains, shaping perspectives profoundly moving forward. No longer content playing victim, Victoria embraced roles reversed, championing causes close to heart, advocating fiercely for others facing similar struggles. Future endeavors awaited exploration, horizons expanding exponentially thanks to recent achievements. Possibilities loomed limitless, beckoning boldly toward adventures unknown. With renewed purpose guiding steps confidently forward, Victoria prepared embarking journeys destined altering landscapes forevermore. Back at her old workplace, whispers circulated anew, tales of rags to riches transformations inspiring envy, admiration, resentment. Co-workers glanced sideways, speculating silently whether similar fates awaited patients persevering tirelessly against odds seemingly insurmountable. Meanwhile, upper management scrambled damage control mode, attempting salvage reputations tarnished irreparably overnight. Victoria observed quietly, detached emotionally yet acutely aware ripple effects cascading outward indefinitely. Karma manifested beautifully poetic fashion, justice served albeit indirectly. Satisfaction lingered bittersweetly, tempered wisdom gleaned traversing rocky roads paved adversity. Life lessons etched indelibly hearts minds alike, reminders resilience rewarded ultimately truth prevailing universally timeless. The months following Google's acquisition transformed Victoria's life in ways she could never have imagined. Her once dismissed side project became the cornerstone of a revolutionary product line, one that disrupted industries and changed how people interacted with technology on a daily basis. The media hailed her as an innovator, a visionary who refused to give up despite being underestimated at every turn. But for Victoria, it wasn't just about the accolades or the financial windfall, it was about proving something deeper, that passion and perseverance could overcome even the most suffocating barriers. She remembered all too well the sting of rejection from her former employer, the way they had dismissed her ideas as unprofitable, without truly understanding their potential. Now, standing on the other side of success, she felt not bitterness but gratitude, for the lessons learned, for the fire those rejections ignited within her, and for the clarity that came with knowing exactly what she wanted to fight for. With her newfound wealth and influence, Victoria didn't retreat into luxury or idle comfort. Instead, she channeled her energy into creating opportunities for others who might find themselves in similar situations, brilliant minds stifled by corporate bureaucracy or societal doubt. She founded a non-profit incubator called Phoenix Rise, dedicated to supporting underappreciated innovators over the age of 40. It was a direct response to the ageism she'd faced and a testament to her belief that creativity has no expiration date. At Phoenix Rise, applicants weren't judged solely on profit projections or market trends. Instead, Victoria and her team looked for passion, resilience, and the spark of genius that often gets overlooked in traditional settings. They offered funding, mentorship, and access to networks that many aspiring entrepreneurs only dreamed of. Within its first year, the incubator helped launch dozens of startups, ranging from sustainable energy solutions to educational platforms designed to bridge gaps in underserved communities. One evening, as Victoria stood on stage at a gala celebrating Phoenix Rise's inaugural class of graduates, she scanned the room filled with hopeful faces. There were inventors, artists, engineers, and dreamers, all people who had been told no at some point in their lives but refused to let that define them. As she prepared to speak, a wave of emotion washed over her. This moment wasn't just hers, it belonged to everyone who dared to keep going when the odds seemed insurmountable. Tonight, she began, her voice steady yet warm, we celebrate not just innovation but the courage it takes to believe in yourself when no one else does. We celebrate the power of second chances, and third, fourth, and fifth chances if necessary. Because sometimes, the world doesn't see your worth right away. Sometimes, you have to build the future yourself. Applause erupted as tears glistened in the corners of her eyes. For Victoria, this was more than vindication, it was fulfillment. She had turned pain into purpose, using her own struggles to uplift others and reshape the narrative around ambition and age. Back at her home office, a space now expanded into a sprawling creative hub, Victoria reflected on how far she'd come. The walls were adorned with photos of her Phoenix Rise Ments, awards recognizing her contributions to tech and philanthropy, and mementos from her journey. But perhaps the most cherished item was a simple framed note tucked discreetly on her desk. Written in her own handwriting during one of her darkest nights, it read, **, they may doubt you today, but tomorrow belongs to those who refuse to quit. **. Her story reached global audiences through documentaries, interviews, and even a best-selling memoir titled Unprofitable Dreams. In each telling, she emphasized the importance of self-belief, adaptability, and community support. People resonated deeply with her message because it wasn't just about making money, it was about finding meaning, breaking free from limitations, and leaving the world better than you found it. As years passed, Victoria remained a guiding light in both the tech industry and the broader entrepreneurial landscape. Her name became synonymous with resilience, and her legacy inspired countless individuals to pursue their passions fearlessly. Former colleagues from her old job occasionally reached out, congratulating her on her achievements and sheepishly admitting they should have believed in her sooner. Victoria responded graciously, reminding them that hindsight is always clearer, and that she hoped her journey would encourage them to take risks on unconventional talent in the future. In the end, Victoria's happiest moments weren't defined by boardroom victories or multimillion-dollar deals. They were found in the quiet connections she made along the way, mentoring a young woman who reminded her of her younger self, hearing stories of lives transformed by Phoenix Rise, and watching her work ripple outward, touching corners of the world she'd never imagined reaching. One crisp autumn afternoon, as she strolled through a park near her home, Victoria paused to watch children play. Their laughter echoed like music, pure and unburdened. A smile spread across her face as she realized something profound. The seeds she'd planted would continue to grow long after she was gone. Ideas, like trees, take time to mature, but once rooted, they can weather any storm. And so Victoria walked on, her heart full and her spirit light. She had started as someone unseen, undervalued, and underestimated. But she finished as a beacon of hope, a living reminder that dreams deemed unprofitable today might very well change the world tomorrow. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of gold and crimson. Victoria took a deep breath, feeling the cool breeze against her skin. Life, she thought, was beautiful, not because it was easy, but because it was worth fighting for. And fight she did, until the very last chapter of her extraordinary story closed with grace, gratitude, and triumph. She had earned her happy ending, not just for herself, but for everyone whose lives she touched along the way.